A lot of us, even as adults, have got to deconstruct a lot of our education that we had that wasn't right so that we can learn in the right way. If you go to any university and download the topics taught in an MBA, which is the paramount business degree on the planet still to this day, although there are other good ones, then probably half of it at least is totally irrelevant to an entrepreneur.
So today we have with us Mr. Mike Handcock, who is a remarkable individual with a unique ability to take hand-selected entrepreneurs from their current state to their desired state. And as the chairman and founder of the Circle of Excellence Group, Mike has built a reputation and a brand as a highly respected business professional, mentor, and maverick who has well-traveled to over 108 countries. His tenacity, coupled with deep market knowledge and over 40 years of commercial and cultural exposure worldwide, has equipped Mike with the knowledge and wisdom to successfully lead 5 international companies. He is also a best-selling author of books in leadership, professional development, and now truth-seeking novels, making much-needed shift in the business and life strategies of entrepreneurs, corporations, and truth seekers alike. Thank you so much for joining us, Mike. It's a pleasure to have you today.
Deepak, it's a pleasure to be here and great to be with all of the audience here as well. Thanks for having me.
Likewise. And just to begin with the conversation, so what is your background in education, if you could elaborate a bit on that, and specifically in entrepreneurship and being associated with institutions like the SAGE Foundation in India?
Great question. Firstly, my background in education was really interesting in that to understand me and that part of me, I was orphaned at age 15. So I was an only child to a solo mother, and she died when I was 15. And I actually spent the last couple of years at school living with my best friend and his family. So, and I didn't have the opportunity, like all of my friends. I went to a very good school, but I didn't have the opportunity because of money to go to university at 18 or 19, like most other kids. But the interesting thing, Deepak, just to kick off the answer to your question, is that at school, I won, in my final year, I won the English Literature Prize at school. Now, I have written books, but I won the prize at school. And, it would be fair to say that my answers to the questions and everything were pretty much above a lot of the other kids, a deeper thinker in that respect. But then when it came to the government exam, I failed the government exam. So I failed the subject. And I went to my teacher and I said, how can I fail the exam when I'm like the highest person in the whole school at this? He said, Mike, the people who mark those exams, they're just out of school like you. You're way too intelligent for them. They didn't understand what you were saying, so you failed. So I went, Deepak, I said, the education system is wrong. It's wrong. How can you do all these assignments and get right into these books and everything and then fail the government exam? So I lost all faith in education. When I became 30 and I got to a high level in corporate, I realized that if I wanted to become a CEO in corporate, I'd have to get a degree. Up until that stage, between 18 and 30, I'd grown, but I didn't have this official qualification. So then I went to the university. I did a business degree. I literally got the business degree in 2 years. I got straight A's, except for one subject, and I won 2 academic prizes and topping the country. So how did I do that for your listeners? And it's a background to really answering your question, is I simply went to all of the heads of department at university and told them this. I've got no time to study. I'm in a job. I've got a family, blah, blah, blah. Tell me exactly what I need to do to get a top mark in this subject. And they literally got the books and went, okay, don't read that section. We never examine that. Read that section. That's always in there. So I just did what they said and I got straight A's. But do I remember most of that stuff? Absolutely not. So the education system was flawed. And then in my first trip to India in 2006, and I've been to India 21 times since. So in my first trip, I met Maya Shahani. Thadamal Shahani is a name significant with education across India. And I asked her, I think she was 60 years old at the time. She's 75 now. She might kill me for saying that. And I asked her, what does she want to do with the rest of her life. And she said she wanted to set up a foundation that helped kids in India with enlightened education, meaning not reading and writing, but really enlightenment and some of the things that you and I know, Deepak, we need in life. Networking, financial literacy, all those sort of things that really aren't taught at school. And she wanted to call it the SAGE Foundation, which stood for Shahani Academic Global Empowerment. And so I said, where are you going to start? She said, I don't know. So the next day there was, she invited some people to her apartment. And that was funny in itself because she wanted me to talk to them at her apartment. I thought I've never done a talk in an apartment before. And 80 people turned up. Now her apartment can handle 80 people, but her 80 people turned up. And during that talk, I gave Maya's vision. I said, who'd be prepared to help? A lot of people put up their hands. I said, meeting here at 8:30 tomorrow morning, let's get this thing started. About maybe 8 or 10 people turned up the next morning, and that was the start of the SAGE Foundation, which then became part of the Clinton Global Initiative, which then became part of the Global Dialogue Foundation. And it's become a huge thing, all starting from Maya's vision of those grassroots. But that really led me into education as we see it today, and the fact that what I thought it was broken, going right back. So one of our other business partners in Malaysia has the biggest entrepreneur schools in Asia. And she teaches our curriculum, the things that we teach entrepreneurs. You know, if you're a startup or if you've got an engineering company or if you're a creative, it doesn't matter. We've been working with all sorts of those for years and years now, and they use our curriculum and teach it to kids. So they actually have a 7-year-old with $1 million a year tea business at their school. So it's fascinating. And from that, my partner Lundy and I really developed what we call Worldwide Business Intelligence, which is an online ed tech program, which we're utilizing through schools, through corporations, through accountancy practices, business coaches, and the like around the world to teach kids right and to teach people right. Because a lot of us, even as adults, have got to deconstruct a lot of our education that we had that wasn't right so that we can learn in the right way. So it's a long answer to your question, but it's quite a journey to really, 40 years later after that, be sitting as a part owner of an ed tech business.
Indeed, and it's kind of an inspiring story, I would say. And it kind of also connects all the dots from where you began and what you're all actually doing for the space itself, which kind of did not do justice to you as a kid. And now moving ahead to, I would say, escalating to the next level of it, which is entrepreneurship. And if you could just shed some light on the conscious leadership and decision making that you're currently pursuing and sharing with others, and how has it and what has it got to do with the entrepreneur education that you're promoting?
Yeah, great question. Firstly is, I realized many years ago that there was a shift in business, Deepak. And, when I was growing up, everybody was just trying to make profit. It was all about profit. Whether it be big business or small business, it was all about profit. Then as I got into doing what I was doing, I saw that there was a shift. There were these people like Maya, for instance, who really wanted to create social change and revolution and make the world a better place. Let's call it social entrepreneurship. But then as we move sort of through all of the 2012 Mayan prophecy, end of the world stuff and into the new world, there was a new type of entrepreneur that came on board as well. And, I think as an Indian, you'd resonate with this very much. And that's a spiritual entrepreneur. And that spiritual entrepreneur really walks in two worlds. And I find my Indian friends, particularly the most successful ones, really have this down pat, is that they have a whole material side to them over here, but then they have a very deeply spiritual side to them over here. And since I've been doing what I've been doing, I've met a lot of billionaires. And I remember the first time I rang up a billionaire. He's Indian, actually, from Mumbai. And I met him at a movie launch. We did a movie, actually a spiritual movie many years ago. And I rang him up and I said to him, hey, it's Mike Handcock. We met at the movie launch, blah, blah, blah. And I said something that I'd used a lot when I talk to people that are, in good positions. I said, I'm not going to take up too much of your time today. I know you're busy. He said, whoa, 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 stop it. No, I'm not busy at all. I've just been to yoga. I'm now going to do a meditation for an hour, and then I'm going to go to the gym. He said, I have 200 companies and I have 200 CEOs. He said, I'm not busy. Talk to me for as long as you like. And I learned from that there is this new and emerging entrepreneur, which I'm seeing now at grassroots level, which we call conscious entrepreneurs. And Forbes magazine, Deepak, gave the best example of conscious entrepreneurship that I've seen. They're saying conscious entrepreneur is not out there to change the world per se. They are out there to take the deep journey, and they're prepared to take the deep journey within themselves so that they can become the best version of themselves, so that their vision can go out to the world. So that ability for us as entrepreneurs to do the deep work inside of us is paramount to success moving into the third decade of the 21st century. And it comes in sort of things like having a collaborative vision, having a value-driven business model, making it purposeful. So there's some real purpose behind this. You know, understanding that every day your business has to make a difference, not just to your clients, but also to your economy, to the world, etc., to the greater good. And then, of course, there's legacy. And I always say every entrepreneur leaves a footprint, but most of them aren't very good. But that's changing. So I think now we love to work with conscious entrepreneurs. Our process through our ed tech process, which is called Worldwide Business Intelligence, we call it the octopus. Its mascot is the octopus because the octopus is the smartest creature on the planet. It also doesn't have any DNA that can be traced to Earth as well. So I'll let the people out there that love outer space stuff think about that one. And you know, the octopus has many brains and many hearts. So we really look at that as being an incredibly conscious being. And we're so lucky that if your listeners and viewers haven't seen a movie on Netflix called My Octopus Teacher, they should actually watch that movie. It's done by a South African who spends a lifetime under the ocean in the life of an octopus. And we found it fascinating because that movie came out about a year after we launched our brand. But to see the intelligence of the octopus and the resilience and things like that, that's what we're trying to build into entrepreneurs. And if you're watching the video of this, then behind me, you'll see, oh, it's on that side. Behind me, you'll see the blue wildebeest. This painting is called The Crossing, and we loved it because it's really the jump, the leap of faith that we all have to make at some time in our careers into the unknown future. So conscious leadership is about preparing yourself for those constant leaps of faith we all have to make, whether it be COVID changing something, politics changing something, the market changing something. I know there's a whole range of people that are really aggressively attacking big tech at the moment. So that may change. You know, Facebook might not even be around in 5 years. You know, I've got my Clubhouse account, so everybody's moving to new things. There's new things coming up. You have to be prepared to go into the crossing with that. And to do that and be prepared for it, you have to be conscious, which means taking the deep journey inside. And to just finalize that, your question on decisions, one of the billionaires I met and interviewed many years ago in South Africa told me this. He said, Mike, do you want to know what the difference between a billionaire and a millionaire is? And I said, yes, Raymond, that would be great because I'm not a billionaire. He said, billionaires are more intuitive than millionaires.
Yep.
They are able to make decisions so much quicker than millionaires. And of course, they have a good network. But the network is irrelevant unless you're a decision maker and unless you've developed your intuition.
True.
And I never learned to develop my intuition at school or when I went to university later on. So these are tools now that I think everybody in education should be looking to develop in people as well.
True. And I totally agree with the fact that you just put out that experiments and, you know, taking chances is what entrepreneurship is all about. And again, to put out your vision into work is what entrepreneurship basically is. And for you to be envisioning something, you already have to have a conscious thinking about it. And that's, I think, where your work comes into play. And just taking that a step further, so now if we talk about the entrepreneurship education, so right now we just talked about the working aspects of it. Now, if we talk about the, I would say, theoretical aspects of it, how the entrepreneurs are being taught in the schools or the educational institutions per se. So what do you think is presently not working for them? And like you mentioned already, a few of the things that could be changed, but any other suggestions that you think could make a really good impact on the way they're educated about the whole world and the way they should be working as an entrepreneur?
Sure. Great question, by the way. I recently read an article, and I can't remember the name of the guy off the top of my head, but it's a 20-year Harvard professor. And he came out and basically said the article was in, actually, I think it was in one of the Harvard papers. And he said that 90% of what they teach at Harvard for a student is irrelevant. 90%.
Right.
So now, if you think about it, and if anybody watching this, and I apologize to the educationalists out there, but this will maybe help you design curriculum in the future. You know, if you look at an MBA and you look at some of the topics in an MBA and, you know, supplier chain management, tell me one entrepreneur that needs that, right? You know, it's very, very rare. If you go to any university and download the topics taught in an MBA, which is the paramount business degree on the planet still to this day, although there are other good ones, then probably half of it at least is totally irrelevant to an entrepreneur. Totally irrelevant. And almost never used. I mean, I don't use stuff that I learned at university, and I did a business degree and I was in a corporate and I was at general manager level and I had 4,500 staff, and I hardly used a thing that I learned at university in all my years of doing that, and I've hardly used it since. In fact, I did a sabbatical through Harvard many, many years ago now, and I only used two things that I learned at that sabbatical, and they were really good, by the way. I have to say that. The two things I still use them today, I teach them today as part of that. So what we did, and I think that this is what needs to happen now, because entrepreneurs, particularly Deepak, so they've got choices. They can go to a university, pay a lot of money, get their degree, have the badge, and then not use most of it. Then there's the whole online thing. If you just Google entrepreneur courses, there are 171 million options. So who do I trust? Is this going to answer my questions? How much is this going to cost? Are they going to upsell me to this and that? All of this sort of other questions comes in. So that keeps most people stuck. So, and it's an interesting thing, because last year I wanted to, on my partner Landi's birthday, I wanted to bake her a chocolate cake. So I'd never done that before. So I went to Google and I said, you know, chocolate cake recipes. Of course, I can't even tell you how many million of those. So I looked at the first one. It said, use 250 grams of sugar. I thought, that sounds like a lot. I don't think we want that much sugar. Let me look at the second recipe. That said, use a cup of sugar. Now I'm confused. How much is in a cup? Is it 250 grams? Now I have to go somewhere else and find that. When I look at that, it's 200 grams of sugar. So it still seems a lot. So I went low sugar chocolate cakes. Those ones, the pictures didn't look very appetizing. So then I thought, you know what? This is wasting my time. I like Gordon Ramsay. I'm going to see how he makes a chocolate cake. So I wrote Gordon Ramsay, low carb, low sugar chocolate cake. There's a recipe. I made that. It was perfect. So people will always look for a trusted source, right? And a trusted source will always win out over all this stuff that we're getting sent to us in a sea of sameness in the plethora that's Google or whatever search engine you're using. So I think the grassroots of the future of entrepreneurship is not regurgitating stuff that we learned from another course, is not listening to a speaker and then putting our own spin on it and putting that back in the marketplace on Udemy as a course and hoping people will buy it or things like that. What we did is we actually went around the world 22 times in 4.5 years and ran over 100 events with entrepreneurs where we asked, what are your problems and how do we solve them? And we did that everywhere from Mumbai to Melbourne. And I was going to say Massachusetts, but we didn't do one in Massachusetts. We did some in Denver and Florida and Vegas, but not in Massachusetts. And we found out that actually, we knew this for sure, but was able to give structure around this. And we put this in the Octopus program. we found out that actually the answers for everything are absolutely incredibly simple. So we were able to create 120 plus infographics that answer basically every problem that an entrepreneur has in business, and put around that some examples and things like that so people could get it. Because if you honestly are starting your business or in business and you want to know, how do I take my business out of, say, Chennai and move it and start an office in KL, the answer is actually really easy. You don't need a university degree to find that answer. It's just a series of 6 or 7 steps. So that learning by gestalt, which means by doing and by experiencing, I think is the way the world needs to go in education. And that's the problem. The problem with education for entrepreneurs at the moment, it's created by professors and people who have never been entrepreneurs, or taught by other people who have just gleaned it off some speaker and regurgitated it for their own audience or something like that. And it takes too much time. We don't have time anymore. We've got to solve our problems now. I have a saying to people: if the internet is so good, Deepak, why do all of us work so much harder than our parents? And we're not actually any better off, really. So it's all about finding what you want, because getting distracted online is huge. Rescue Time's a great app you can put on your computer, which tells you where to get where you're getting distracted. And they brought out a statistic based on their 150 million users, I think the number was, and the statistic was 43% of users are spending their day doing things that those exact users said were not worth doing, yet they're still doing them. So that's why we've got to change our education process.
Indeed. And then again, it's just like, I totally agree with the points that you mentioned here, which are pretty insightful, I would say. So for the first being that, in a sea of content, there's always quality that'll win eventually. And that's, I guess, where the point where we've come to, with the millions of results for every possibility. But then again, it's just the quality that everyone would, I would say, gravitate towards end of the day, end of discussion there.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's the fact that, in 9 times out of 10, in any problem in business, you just do this.
Yes.
But if you don't know what this is, then you're just constantly searching, and then you go down a rabbit hole. But normally the steps are very, very easy. Business, people think business is hard, and it's hard to make money because you've got to have all these strategies and everything. I've never found that to be the case. I've always found that the problem lies inside the individual.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of that's because they just don't know what to do.
Exactly. And the whole issue with it is just to begin with it. Like you also touched upon the point that the people who are teaching it have not actually been through it. And the one who's not been through it cannot tell you the ABCs of it. He can just put out a few thoughts around it, but if they'll be applicable or not would be a totally different ballgame altogether. Absolutely. And that's where kind of my next question lies. So for the future of all these creative, institutions, or I would say mavericks, or these driven people we call entrepreneurs. So is it still as simple as it used to be with Steve Jobs in a garage, learning on his own? Or has it become more nuanced? Like you mentioned that, now you've created these set of infographics under your organization. So if you could share a few of those nuanced strategies.
Sure. Well, I think what entrepreneurs are struggling with, and particularly we've seen it in the last year, is connection. So, while Steve was in his garage, he still had people around him. He still was able to go to the local burger joint and talk to his friends and do all of that sort of stuff. And these days, entrepreneurs, particularly in the startup and particularly in the tech space, have become very isolated. Yeah. So when we built the Octopus program, the content is just one thing, and the content's great. We recently, just a few days ago, had the head of Harvard from Hong Kong, ex-head of Harvard from Hong Kong, say it's as good as any content that she's seen anywhere in the world for entrepreneurs. But that's only one part of the puzzle. The next part is community and the ability to talk to like minds, the ability to share problems, the ability to find business partners, the ability to get networks, the ability to bounce ideas around and things like that, and the ability to keep up to date with everything as well. And, particularly as new things come on. And I think, that's something that in the modern world, you would think it works through technology, but most people are so overwhelmed with it that they just don't use it. I can't tell you the last time I read a blog, for instance. It'd definitely be a few months back. because all of us, we're struggling for time, and most people build the life that they want around the business that they have, which doesn't leave them much time for life. Whereas I'm much more about, decide the life that you really want to have and then fit your business around that and make it work around that. So the direct answer to your question is, within the Octopus, we've put community in there. Every week we have webinars, live webinars where people can interact with other people in the community and where they can interact with the presenters as well. Then we stack some events behind those and some summits and things like that, which people from all around the world can come and attend and get to know other people, because that's the part of entrepreneurship that's missing. If I go to our school in Malaysia, it's not our school, it's Ann Tam's school, but it's partially our curriculum. All of their teachers are in business with the students. They have to run businesses in the class during the year. So all the teachers are coming not from teaching school, they're actually entrepreneurs that have got teaching degrees, but they teach core subjects that I wish I had have learned at school. Financial literacy. So how to actually manage your money. That would have been useful. Would have saved me a lot of money over the years. Networking, deal making. So how to make a deal, how to make a win-win-win deal, a win for you, a win for the person with the deal, and a win for the planet at the same time. Those type of things are what's missing. And I think when entrepreneurs become too insular, and these days in the world of big news where, I guarantee you Clubhouse, which is the next best thing at the moment, is going to come out, it's worth now $60 billion or something like that. And Elon Musk just put $78 billion on his bottom line last year. Unfortunately, what that does, it's making everybody want to try and be Elon Musk. Yeah. 50 years ago, everybody wanted to be Frank Sinatra. Now everybody wants to be Elon Musk. So the problem with that is, as they're trying to be Elon Musk, they're probably moving out of their apartment because they can't afford it anymore and back living with their parents, or in many countries around the world, living in their car with a beat up old laptop trying to make $1 million, where I think if they just got out and connected with some people and talked about their ideas and shared their frustrations, they would probably end up building some baseline products very simply in the area in which they're in, which would actually bring in some nice income and give them the breathing space to work on the grand slam. So connection is the thing that's missing at the moment, which we need more of.
And that's just like totally on point. Connection is it's just a lot of things, not just one thing. And that's what a lot of individuals are missing right now. And that's what we are also searching for on these social media platforms, and hopelessly just missing onto it eventually. And that's the whole game is done. And coming to the close of the conversation. So going back to the education bit of it. So what do you think that conscious leadership, as you're teaching it and promoting it as well, would kind of, do for schools or education in particular in the coming years?
Well, I think, great. I think conscious leadership, and people can go to Facebook and join the conscious leadership movement. It's on there, or drop me a note on LinkedIn or anything like that. But I think conscious leadership is making you self-aware. And, so many people get up on January 1 and say, in 2021, I'm going to make more sales calls, for instance. But they're just not wired to make sales calls. There's something deep inside them, whether it's in their star sign or whatever, or some experience they had when they were 4 years old. They're just not wired to make sales calls. So they become really beat up because they're constantly beating themselves up about that. Conscious leadership means that you truly understand who you are. So you're constantly working in your bliss and then solving the issues by maybe outsourcing or doing some other thing to get the other things that we need to do in business done. I might be an entrepreneur and I might be flamboyant and creative and all of that sort of stuff, but I know every number in my business because I have to. I know every number. I know the value of a call. I know the value of a LinkedIn contact. I know everything like that. So, but most people aren't prepared to do that because they don't know themselves. Yeah. Once you know yourself, you can do that. So conscious leadership is about taking the journey within so that you can know yourself better.
Great. And on that note, I think we'll close the conversation for today, Mike. And it's been a pleasure to have you today with us.
Thank you, Deepak. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.